So that happens in our conversations, in our presentations, in our communications a lot. So being aware of the frameworks, how to open, how to close, how to deal with that mountain, valley, peaks, all that journey in between is crucial. And the better understanding you have of that, the more powerful you'll be as a communicator.
Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. I'm your host, Jody Krangle, and this podcast will discuss just how sound influences our behavior. I generally talk about this in the context of advertising and marketing, but there are other places this is important too. I really feel that it plays a much more important role in our lives than maybe we realize. So let's delve a little deeper. This is the second part of my interview with Robert Kennedy III. We've sort of danced around this a little because you mentioned it depends on what the other person needs to connect with you.
Right.
Do you have like a method or something that you use to determine what that other person might need from you?
So the
you may not
best
know.
way, well, the
you may
best
not know
way
to start
is,
with,
and
right?
this sounds simple, but the best way is asking.
Okay.
Asking
what do you
questions.
ask?
Well, the questions that you ask, especially when you start up with people, you find out where they are mentally. You find out what is happening with them. And so one of the questions a simple question, I say, hey, what's going on in your world?
Okay, that's a good one.
Right?
Yeah.
And so instead of saying, how are you doing to people, often I will ask, what's happening in your world, or what's going on in your space? What's going on in your world? And they'll say, oh yeah, things are good. This is happening. I just did this. I just did that. And so when they start with that, I immediately begin to listen.
Okay.
I immediately begin to listen to kind of get a sense of, okay, where are they energy wise? What's happening with them? What are they open to, or what are they willing to share with me right now that can give me an insight or some clue as to, their I don't want to say their level of desperation, but how connected they are to certain situations in their lives. What's happening with them that is driving them right now.
Yeah. And I guess it gives some insight into what's important to them in the moment as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Interesting. So how do you feel that people could increase their communication skills? Definitely asking that open-ended kind of a question is one of them. Do you have other methods that you use?
So I just hinted at one.
Yeah.
And a big part of communication is the flip side of the talking. It's the listening.
Yes.
How can you listen more? How can you listen more? And you listen more by being interested, by being curious. One of the things that a phrase or a 2-word phrase that you can use in communication as you start some conversations where you want to dig a little bit deeper is, I'm curious.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Jody, where did you get that shirt that you're wearing? Or I'm curious, Jody, what is it about that color that caused you to choose to wear that particular outfit? What do you like about that?
Sure. Yeah. They're good questions. And yeah.
So really it's about you exploring your own curiosity. And becoming or living curiosity that is going to help you become a better communicator, because you're going to learn more about people. You're going to learn more about just little things about them and what they want, what they desire, things that they may be doing unconsciously.
Yeah.
Right? But they didn't think about it until you ask them that question. I mean, has that ever happened to you where you're kind of, somebody asks you a question, you're like, you know what? I do that. I never really noticed it, or I never thought about it until you just said it.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So, asking questions is huge. And then shutting up and listening to the answers is even better.
Yeah. Is there anything else that people could do? I mean, that's a great tip right there, basically. Intentional listening.
Yeah. Yeah. So what have we said so far? We've said listening. We've said asking great questions.
Yes.
The other thing that people can do to really become even more effective communicators is paying attention to power zones.
Okay.
Or the time of day, because I'll give my marriage as an example.
Mm-hmm.
There's some times of day where it's better to talk to me than others.
Okay.
Right? There are times of day where one of the things that my wife and I have had to learn is how to reach each other in those zones of our day. My wife is, so I talked about me being an introvert. My wife is the total opposite.
Okay.
She's an extrovert, and she drives her energy from being around people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
so this time's got to be hard on her.
At the end of the day,
mm-hmm.
she's like, and she wants conversation about certain things. At the end of the day, I'm kind of like,
yeah, you're ready to go away now.
I want to read my Kindle and,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we've had to learn that thing where, we meet each other's needs, but we've had to also be aware of some things and have conversations where I've had to say, okay, babe, I know that you want to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give me 10 minutes to finish this chapter? Or, can we do this in 10 minutes? Mm-hmm. And she's like, okay, all right, cool. Right. And so, but she also knows that, listen, and maybe it's because I'm getting older, but once it hits like 8:30, 9 o'clock, I'm not so, that's not my zone. That's not my time. You want to talk? Okay, hit me up at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, yeah. So when you mean power zones, when you're talking about power zones, you mean times of the day? Is that what you're
times of the day?
Okay.
Times of the day when you tend to be more energetic, more productive, more open.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And for me, mine is probably from about 9:30, 10 o'clock to about 1:30 in the afternoon. If I need to do things that are important in my life, if I need to have important conversations, if I need to have conversations where without a doubt I'm going to be fully present, that's my time. Once it gets to about 4, 5, the distraction element kind of creeps in a little bit more.
Oh yeah.
And I have to work harder to communicate more effectively at those times.
So play to your power moments, your time that you are best functional. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. With my husband, if I try to talk to him in the morning, that's just not happening.
Right.
It's just that
Exactly.
I've learned this. This is like, do not talk to him in the morning. Let him like do what he needs to do in the morning. And then we can sort of like meet at like, 9. We can like 9 or later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess everyone has like a different time of day that is better for them for focus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think it probably has a lot to do with what time you get up and what time you go to bed.
Well, it does have something to do with that, but it's a personal thing.
Oh yeah,
as well. Because, for example, the other day I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Okay,
I got up at 3 or 3:30 because, I had to do some work for a client. I had a presentation and I got up early to prepare for that. So I get up, and at about 3:30. My son comes downstairs.
Oh.
And he's like, "Hey, Daddy." I said, "What are you doing up?" He said, "Oh, I saw some light coming from under my door." I said, "Your room's upstairs." "Oh, I just saw some light." And I kind of felt internally like interrupted.
Yeah.
I felt like, why is anybody else? This is my doggone time. This is my. Why is anybody else in my space at this point? Why is much less was anybody trying to talk to me right now?
It's 3:30 in the morning.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I would not feel that way if I, slept late until like 8 or 8:30, and I got up then and somebody tried to talk to me at 9 o'clock. I'm like, okay, cool. That's fine. So it didn't have as much to do with when I went to sleep. It's just kind of, there are times of the day where I'm just naturally more open to conversation
Yeah.
and productivity than others. So I've got to be aware of that. And if you happen to notice and recognize that in others, then you can use that not just to your advantage, but you can use it to have greater conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I guess people are more focused at that specific time that's good for them.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, that's pretty good. Good tips all around. We could definitely use those tips.
Yeah.
So I wanted to also ask you, because getting back to the audio branding part of this, you had mentioned that you suggest some apps to the people that you teach. And I'm curious as to what tools you're using for your teaching. Maybe that's a complete 180 here, but
no, that's fine.
Yeah, but I'm curious because I think people do intentionally want to learn more about how to be a better communicator, and you're teaching leaders how to do that. So as an extension of that, what tools do you use to help them be better at doing that?
Well, from a technological perspective, sometimes as leaders, you want to be aware of things like fillers in your speech. You want to be aware of pacing. You want to be aware of energy. You want to be aware of how you come across to people who you are transferring information to. And so one of the apps that I recommend for people is an app called Orai, O-R-A-I, which allows you to track some of those things. If you record 60 seconds or you record 3 minutes or 5 minutes into it, it'll do some analytics and send back to you the data of the usability or the tone or the energy of your conversation. It'll point out filler words, but it'll also point out how you can improve or enhance certain areas of your speech. So that's a good one. If you're more interested in just looking at fillers and space and pace of your speech, there's another one called UMO, UMMO, that people can use, and there are quite a few different things that you can use. Otter.ai also is an AI that helps with transcription, but it also helps kind of keep you on track with your speaking. It helps with the, what's the word I want to use? Understandability.
Okay.
of your speaking. So there are quite a few apps that you can use to just equip yourself and to be even more aware of becoming more effective in your communication.
Sure. I'm sure it's a huge wake-up call, too, if you get one of those reports back and you don't like what you see.
Well, the goal is to not like what you see.
Yeah. We can all improve.
Right.
Wow. I got to try one of those.
Yeah.
I am convinced I would definitely not like what I saw.
And that's okay. I mean, I think when you first started doing voice acting, or when you did your first class, your teacher probably didn't say, "Oh my gosh, Jody, you're so freaking amazing and you're perfect."
No,
right?
no.
They said, you're good, but here's a couple of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still coaching.
Yeah.
I will be coaching until the rest of my life. Like I don't think we ever stop learning. And I think that's one of the great things about being a coach, because I'm sure when you coach people on this kind of thing, you learn at the same time that you're helping other people learn.
Absolutely. It's funny. As I mentioned earlier, I was a high school teacher, and one of the courses that I taught was physics and physical science. And as I taught it, there were a couple of times where I was teaching a concept and I remember thinking, well, geez, why didn't my teacher teach it like this? I feel like I totally didn't understand it until now.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
So you definitely do continue to learn and get different perspectives and you break things down differently as you begin to teach it.
Are you looking for ways to improve your company's or podcast's impact? You'd be surprised how powerful the use of an intentional audio branding strategy can be.
Want to know more? I have a free downloadable PDF that gives you my 5 tips for implementing an intentional audio strategy at voiceoversandvocals.com/audio-branding-strategy. That location does ask to put you on a mailing list, just to send you updates on when the new podcasts come out. But if you really don't want to give your email out, I understand. Just contact me directly. My email is all over my website, and I'll make sure you get that PDF without needing to sign up anywhere. If you do sign up, though, you also get access to a resources section called The Studio, where I have videos, white papers, and PDFs, discounts from my guests, and snippets of audio from my guests that no one else gets to hear. So maybe it's worth your while. Totally up to you. And of course, if you're looking for voiceovers, you can get in touch with me about that too. Now, back to the podcast. And as a public speaker, what have you learned lately? I'm curious. Is there anything that you've learned lately that you didn't realize wasn't, you didn't realize you were doing it, or there was some revelation you had that?
Well, one of the things I like to do is I like to break down speeches.
Okay.
And I have learned and recognized frameworks. So
okay.
it's kind of like patterns. As a musician, I play the piano. Piano is one of the instruments that I play.
Mm-hmm.
And people who don't play music just kind of look and they see all of these keys on a piano. And they're like, oh my gosh, how do you know which one to hit when? And in my mind as a musician, I'm like, well, there's only 13 notes in the octave. And they go in a repeatable pattern the entire time. Yeah, one set is higher, one set is lower than the other, but it's a repeatable pattern. And it makes sense to me, right? And so there's this framework that I'm working within when I'm playing music. And it's the same in speaking. Effective speakers utilize frameworks in order for connection with their audience, and frameworks from a vocal perspective as well, in how you do certain things with your voice. And it's not just random. And when it is random, people notice, and it's referred to as rambling.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Guilty as charged. Yes.
Yeah. That's because these people are just talking. They're not using public speaking frameworks. They're not using storytelling frameworks. Right. So I think about it like this. Imagine if you went to a movie and the movie played the end first.
Why sit through the rest of it?
Right. They played the end first, and then they kind of went backwards with it. And there's some movies that they do flashbacks, but they don't give you the climax first. They don't give you the problem solving part of it first.
Wasn't there a movie? It was called Momentum, I think. Wasn't it? Yeah. And they started with the ending. But you had to understand it by watching the rest.
Right. But they still gave you, there were some moments at but they didn't end with the beginning, right? They started with something close to the end, and then at the end, now you understood and you kind of got a wrap up, in some ways. But they don't start with the wrap up and then never come back to it.
Yes.
Right? Or they don't start with the end and then, okay, I'm going to go to the beginning. Hey, let me just give you that conflict section like right after, so you can't really connect them. So there's a framework that is used when you speak, when you tell stories, when you communicate, and that utilizing those frameworks makes it easier to do certain things. And so, those are some of the things that I've discovered and learned as I've grown as a communicator and a speaker.
Yeah, and I'm sure storytelling is a big part of that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
As a musician, I'm sure that the whole, I mean, I know that I use this in voice acting because for me, the patterns are notes and beats. So when I'm looking at a script, I'm looking at the notes and beats of that script, subconsciously. To me, that makes sense. There's a pattern there. And I'm sure it's the same when you're doing public speaking and storytelling. There's a pattern there that you recognize and can communicate to others, which... I mean, that's
well, you literally can draw a waveform in public speaking if you wanted to do that. And it's kind of like going up this mountain. You're climbing the mountain and you're bringing people up to this peak. And when you get them to that peak, everything is not downhill, like straight downhill from there. It's still, you kind of go down a little bit. And then it's almost like at the end, you kind of come back up again because you want to leave them inspired. You want to leave them on a high. You want to leave them engaged and like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. I want to move into action because of that, right? Because, and there's some things that kill speeches in that a speaker might do a very good job of opening and they take you up this mountain and they get you to the climax and they do a terrible job of closing or landing the plane. Right. And so that entire thing is lost. I'm a pastor's kid. So there's a funny story that I tell that there was one time there was a pastor who came to our church and he did a really great sermon. He delivered a really great sermon in 15 minutes and then he spoke for 45 more.
Oh, oh, well, that's not good. Yeah.
Right. So that happens in our conversations, in our presentations, in our communications a lot. So being aware of the frameworks, how to open, how to close, how to deal with that mountain, valley, peaks, all that journey in between is crucial. And the better understanding you have of that, the more powerful you'll be as a communicator.
Going a little deeper into that, I'm curious now as well, what was the mistake that pastor made? Like when they told the great sermon for 15 minutes, what was the last 45 like? Like what did they do that made it not quite so compelling?
Well, so and it's funny. It wasn't like a boring thing. It was that last 45 wasn't connected to the first. It was kind of like trying to use emotion and energy only to hype up the audience. It was kind of like using the energy, but in the beginning, you told a really poignant story. You led me to a point or a lesson from that story, and then you showed me application and how I can use that in my life, and then some steps I can use. And then after that, we're done. We're really done. You don't need to talk anymore. Right? Yeah. And so they just kind of kept talking, and it was like as they got close to their hour, you could see that they were just kind of jumping from point to point and they were having trouble closing because they'd missed the opportunity way back then.
So what's a good close?
And it depends. It depends on what you are trying to do. Are you trying to inspire your audience? Then leave them with a quote, leave them with a statement, leave them with a story, leave them with something that's going to inspire them to action. Are you just trying to inform your audience? Are you trying to get them to understand data? Are you trying to get them to understand information? Then at the end, okay, great. Now that you've got this data, what are you going to do with it? Are we going to start a new project? Are you going to apply this information to a current project that you're working on? So it really depends on what it is that you're trying to impart to your audience and what is it that you want them to do. So there's not one good close. It just really depends.
That's great. Yeah. Well, purpose is, of course, you got to know what your purpose is.
Yes.
That goes back to what's your why, right?
We've connected it.
Yeah.
We've connected the dots.
Okay, that's good. So what is it that you're working on right now? Are you, I know you've written a ton of books and, you're doing coaching and you're helping people with public speaking. And what's on the agenda right now?
Well, right now we're working on putting together a summit and conference. We were initially planning a storytellers conference. Your Story Deserves a Stage is the title of the conference that we were planning for October of this year. But because of COVID-19 and quarantines, we're shifting a lot of things. And so we're looking at how to deliver that and shift that to a virtual conference. And so we're in the process of that adjustment and what it looks like. Is it going to be one day? Is it going to be over multiple days? Is it going to be 4 hours, 6 hours? How does that look? So that's what we're working on right now. Also finishing up a couple of books. There's a book the book is done. We're just waiting for the cover to be finished. It's called Find Your Voice, 28 Secrets to Speaking Up.
Ooh, okay.
And so
I'm going to get that one.
yeah. So that'll be out shortly. We just got back the internals from the formatting guy, and so we're waiting for the cover to be done, and then we should have that up on Amazon within the next 4 weeks or so.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And how can people find out more about you if they want to look you up on the web?
I'm easy to find. RobertKennedy3.com is my website. And I'm Robert Kennedy 3, the number 3 on all social media, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Yeah, Robert Kennedy 3.
That definitely does make it easier.
Yeah.
And you have another book as well, 28 Days to a New Me, right? A journey of commitment.
A journey of commitment. So that book was written in 2013.
Okay.
We released a second edition of it in 2018 because there was a university that wanted to use it for a program. So we created a second edition. The second edition is actually now on Amazon. We created it for the university, but we didn't put it on Amazon until this year. So that's up. There's another book called 7 Ways to Know You Were Meant to Lead. And that was in 2016, 2017.
Sure.
So yeah, so those were the two major main books that were out, and we've got a few others in the works. We're working on one now called The 5 Habits of Confident Communicators. And so
that's another good one. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be finished up with that one probably later this year. So maybe release on that won't happen till spring of 2021. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, good luck with all of it. Wow, that's a lot. And I hope the virtual conference goes really well. I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah, we'll share more about it within the coming weeks, and yeah, hopefully you can be a part of the conference.
Well, thanks so much for talking with me.
You're very welcome.
Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available on all the usual outlets. Until next time.